As long as I have the Camaro up on the ramps and jacks and I'm working underneath it because I've been working on the rear, changing the lube on the rear axle, I'm also going to take the opportunity to pull the prop shaft out, remove the prop shaft, and just check the universal joints. I don't have any problem. Nothing seems to be bad, but I'm starting to drive it and put some miles on it, and it's just worth a check. These cars have the GM factory installation uses an injected nylon to retain the caps in the assembly. So you can't take it apart. You can only get 2 caps off. When you take it apart, you can pull off the 2 bearing caps at the rear that are held down by straps. But you can pull the shaft out, and you can roll the joints back and forth carefully and feel if they're rough or dry, or if something's kind of on the edge. If they feel good, I'll put it back in and let her keep on running, but it just gives me a chance, as long as I have it up, to get it out and take a quick look. So this morning I'm going to try to break these U-joints loose. I don't think there's anything wrong with them, but it's time. I'd like to just do an inspection and see if things seem like they're tight. It looks like it's an 11mm socket. There, that one, pop that one loose. That one was easier. Maybe I can switch it over to the ratchet now. Yeah, there that one goes. Before I take it apart, I'll have to mark to make sure I put it back in the same orientation with the drive shaft to the yoke. Now, to get to the back side, I'm going to have to roll this guy over. So what that means is I have to jack one wheel off the ground just enough to rotate that and get the other side out where I can reach it. So I'm not under the car. I've jacked it up just enough, and it's in, the wheels are blocked. The transmission's in neutral rather than park, so that the park pulse not engaged. And I've lifted it enough that one tire's off the ground, because otherwise you can't turn the prop shaft. So what we'll do here, so we'll just roll this guy over till the other side is easy to reach. I will spray those and break them loose, but I'm going to set this tire back down on the ramp and get us back on a jack stand before I go underneath. Well, it's hard to get a good view of this with the camera, but I've already got the back side bolts out. We need to take this side out. I've already got them broken loose. A good batch of penetrating oil and a couple hours of soak time worked out just fine. Okay, there's one. These guys are nice long fine thread bolts. There's a pair of them and a strap. And there's the other one. How hard that'll be to break loose. Sometimes they come right out, and sometimes they don't. And you want to be careful that you don't tear up the seals on the U-joint or bend things. go. That's one side. Oh, the cords are in the way here. There we go. All right. So we got that loose. I would say that one doesn't feel so good. You don't want the caps falling off. So I'm going to put a piece of tape around. So that gets the front end down. Or I should say the back end down. Now I have to go to the other end and pull out the spline. And you kind of want to keep the U-joints from being treated roughly. And we want to slide it out of the transmission. I've got a pan under the back of the transmission because a lot of times you'll lose a little bit of transmission fluid when the oil comes, a little trans oil will come out the tail housing. And there's the U-joint. Goes. So now that I've got the shaft out, the yoke's got a little bit of corrosion on it, but for the most part it looks pretty good. On the outside, on the seal side, I'll probably polish that up before I put it back in. But the seal hasn't been leaking, so I won't probably mess with that. However, let's see how the U-joints are here. So if I hold that up, that one feels pretty good actually. It's pretty smooth. If I flip this guy around, my tape is moving again. It's always a good idea to tape the caps so they don't come off, but and sometimes it can be hard to keep on there. But that one, take the tape off. This one, you can't see it easily, but right in there, it's got a rough spot. That doesn't feel very good. And on the other side, this one doesn't feel real good either. Now it actually does have a clip on it that keeps them from coming apart. There is a retainer. But as I rotate that, it doesn't feel very good. And the other direction of the cross is definitely rough. So, think that means I'm going to need to put a set of joints in it. I would say that does not feel good. You can kind of see it pop right there. It's like there's a low spot where either the bearings are bad or the yoke is brunelled. So I'll need to find a shop that can press them, or I got a nice new set of U-joints installed in the shaft today. Went down to the local Napa store, and they have a shop next door to them that auto repair that can put in the U-joints. So there's a brand new set of SKF/Napa heavy duty joints. I asked for the old ones back because I was curious how bad off they were. This one is the rear, and it was the one that I felt most rough. If you look down in the caps, I don't know if we'll get a good look at this. Let's see if I can get what you'll see in the bottom of this cap looks like the ends of the rollers, like the rollers were all breaking up. Trying to get a better look at that. See if we get a better look. See, so you can see in the bottom of that cap that there are, I'll call them light colored dots. Those are sections of the rollers, just the ends of them, maybe 1/8 of an inch long. So there was a lot of debris in there. There wasn't much grease. You can kind of see that on these crosses. The front one, again, if you look at there's some grease, but here if you look at this, I'm having trouble getting the right amount of light on it. But if you look at that cross, you can see lines kind of grime, and you can see inside the cup there's grime. It's like lines of rust. So from sitting all those years, the joints were deteriorated quite a bit. Even though not all the grease is gone, they're not in very good shape. So it was the right thing to replace them. My only mild disappointment was they swapped them out for me because they told me that I had asked for the wrong ones. These are a UJ235, and I had asked for a UJ234, which is what they said online that I needed. And the shop that installed them said, no, 235 is the right number. And as I get home and look at it, near as I can tell, the only difference between them is the 235 is greasable and the 234 is not greasable. And quite honestly, these days, I would opt for the non-greasable ones because they're sealed, and the greases today are pretty good. And you know, a grease fitting is actually an opportunity for moisture and contamination to get into the joint. And on this one, they've actually put the universal joint. You can't see it because of the tape, but the bump in the tape, the fitting is actually in the end of one of the caps, which I guess makes it a little easier to reach. But when you buy the greasable joint, they tell you, see, there's the one there, there's the fitting. It's not a conventional Zerk, it's a little bit of an odd But the instructions are that they want you to grease those at every oil change. And frankly, I think that's over-greasing, and when you grease them that often, you'll end up pushing grease out around the seals, and then the seals will be compromised, and you'll just sling that grease around the bottom of the car and make a mess. So I'm a little disappointed. I would have stayed with the sealed ones. Again, because I think the technology has progressed to the point where greasing U-joints, these old ones went 100,000 miles, so, and 30 years, so. But I have what I have. I'm not going to complain. I'm just going to get this reinstalled. Generally speaking, I've cleaned up the yoke a little bit, crocus cloth a little bit where it was, where the end was a little bit, well, it had some surface rust on it. The bushing actually ran further back, so it wasn't a big deal, but I wanted it clean going back together. So I'll fix that with some engine oil on the spline and around that fitting, around the outside of the yoke. And then I'm going to get back under the car here and slide her back in and bolt her up and see how we do. Spline started, wiggle it, shove her down in. Perfect. So once you get that in, now we got to boost up the back end here and hook the new U-joint in. I have a scratch mark here. I have a scratch mark on the end. Not only a scratch mark, but a Sharpie mark on this end. So what we need to do is pull the tape off without dislodging the caps, because that would cause all the little needle bearing rollers to come out. Alright. Slide the spline back. Get that guy tucked in there. So that's how it looks. And then we got to get we have a couple of straps. Like that. The other one feels like it's tucked in where it belongs. So another cap for back there. These Camaros have this torque arm on the back, and that really makes it extra challenge because it's hard to reach around to the back side, and it's hard to reach around to the back side and work on the U-joint on the back side of the yoke. It's pretty well hidden, but at the moment I'm getting it in there, so one more bolt to sneak in there. See if I can get my arm over over the top here again and alright, it's in the hole. But my arm is all the way back over the axle from the back end. I'm going to pull that out. Let's see what else we can do here. I'm going to get out my screwdriver with the 11mm socket. And we'll run these guys down. Come on. The instructions are to make sure you bring these down fairly evenly. You really want to make sure they get seated well. The U-joint itself looks like it's in the bottom of the yoke where it belongs. You're just not going to be able to see because it's on the back side. But I was able to get on it with the universal. And we're spinning her down, so we'll see how that goes. These are fine thread ones, so you gotta they take a while. But with a fine thread you get a lot of leverage, clamp load. Okay, that one's tight. Okay, ultimately the book says that these bolts should be 15 foot-pounds, 20 newton meters. I'm going to start by just snugging them with a 1/4-inch ratchet, making sure they look good. And they do. Okay, so the straps are in place, and so at this point, again, I'm going to set the camera down, and I'm going to put a wrench on these guys and torque them up, but that's pretty much the job. I got to torque them, and I have to jack the car just a little bit till the rear wheel's off the ground so I can spin the wheel and turn the prop shaft 180 degrees so I can put a torque wrench on the ones on the back side. And then this job's done, we'll go out and road test it.